Good evening. My name is Minister Johnny Banks Sr. I'm the Executive Director of Anaka Midnight. Anaka Midnight is located at 400 West 76th Street and Suite 206. Man, it's great to be back, on the show. Just talking a little bit about tonight about what Anaka Midnight is doing, some of the initiatives that we have, some of the new stuff that's going on, some of the things that we've been doing for a while that we are building on. For those of you all who may not know, Anaka Midnight is located at 400 West 76th Street and Suite 206. We have several initiatives, several programs that we're working on that helps build families, that helps build communities, that teach young people, young adults, and give them some of the tools they need to put themselves to work, to take care of their families, and also get some young people off the street. We spend a lot of time with youth programs. Anaka Midnight is a prevention education agency. Our organization has been in existence since 2003. And from 2003 up until today, 14 years later, we have built, with the help of some good staff, we have built with the help of a lot of volunteers, we have built with a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of selfless service, an organization that anyone can be proud to be a part of and proud to say that they have been serviced by not only me, Miss Ida Brown, or some of the other staff, but they can say they have been serviced by people that truly care about their needs, that truly care about what's going on with their families, and try to do the right things in a right manner to help them get where they need to be, do what they need to do, and have the things they need to have in their lives. You know, there are a lot of things that's going on in the world right now with the troubles that we're having with the natural disasters in Puerto Rico, Mexico, Houston, some of the things that happen in Florida, also the tragedy or the evil that reared its ugly head in Las Vegas through the persistent and consistent violence that occurs in the major metropolitan areas, Chicago being no exception. Those things seem to be a given. They almost look like they have become the norm, but they are not the norm. They are not isolated incidents. They are part of those issues that we have that we seem to don't want to solve or they want to deal with right now. And we're going to talk about that during the course of this 13-week show. We're going to bridge, and we're going to look at some of those topics. We're going to open some of them up for discussion. Anybody who has any comments on anything that I'm talking about, feel free to call in at 312-738-1060. You're watching the Hotline 21. We'll be on every Friday at 6 o'clock. Call at 312-738-1060. As for me and dealing with the issues of our times, one of those issues that still is very important to me, and always been important to me, is the impact that substance abuse, that's driven by mental illness, the impact that substance abuse is having on youth, that's having on families, that's having on communities, that's having on impact on this nation. We can never get too far away from the discussion of how do we become a drug-free society. Until we reach that, then we're going to see some other things that continue to take our young men out of their homes, that take our young women, young mothers out of our homes and out of our communities, away from their lives, from the lives of their children. And that is just dealing with the whole the prison industrial complex. In 1973, when some of those very stringent, very, very unfair, unjust laws were passed by Governor Nelson Rockefeller, was the first one who actually started to pass these laws, and they were picked up and picked up steam as the years went ahead. And when they got to Bill Clinton, they were really exponentially expanded, and we went from 1 strike to 2 strikes to 3 strikes to mandatory sentences, which is what we have now. And if you go from the 1973 and if you check the data, you can see a consistent growth in the prison population until where it's bursting at the seams right now. And it seems like until we can get the prison population decreased and the old prison industry under some kind of control, we're going to never see an improvement in our neighborhoods. You know, it's like when a large mass of people are incarcerated, it creates problems of its own. When you take a large number of people out of a community that's there to help build that community, and they are faced with unjust laws over and over and over, when the opportunities to be successful are few, when the educational institution is not producing an educational reality as people would think it should be, then we have a problem. And so now we are faced with homelessness at an all-time high proportion. We don't think about it, but homelessness basically boils down to not just the people that we see that are on the streets, that are living in open air, that are living under viaducts, that are living in homeless tent cities that we see that have transferred themselves from Las Vegas and the Vegas community. Now we're seeing them show up in Chicago, and we see that visibly. But there are so many displaced children. There's so many displaced mothers. There's so many displaced fathers who are very transitional. And when you have a transitional nomadic kind of people that's moving about communities, that's moving in and out of schools, then there's no stabilization. So the communities are unstable. The schools are unstable. Our medical institutions has all of this is based on the instability that's created by a transition of people who are living with relatives, living with friends, squatters in different places, who simply are struggling with the whole issue of homelessness. And I remember there were times we used to boil it down to just simply anybody who does not have a lease with their name on it, we could consider them homeless. A deed with their name on it, we consider them homeless. So we have a lot of people who are victimized and who are victims of this homeless reality. And then we got not only mass incarceration, but mass employment, as we have not kept up with the technological advances of our time, as jobs are becoming more and more automated, as we start to see things that are just totally different. I'll give you one good example. It's as simple as it gets. If you were to go and have your car washed, many of the car washes of today are automated. You drive in, you put your money in, you select what kind of car wash you want, and you keep moving. There is no human touch at all. There's no human you give your money to. There's no human to ask you what kind of wash you want. Those car washes will soon be gone because there's much more money to be made in a fully automated car washing business. The same thing with our stores. As we become more and more and we go into stores, we see the human lines are very long as the machines start to take your money and give you change, ask you, do you want a bag, place your items in the baggage area. All of these things are being commanded by machines as banking becomes more online, as shopping becomes more and more online. But we have not kept up with the technological advances that would allow us, many people, to be employed in these areas. So subsequently, the workforce for labor type positions is now 200-300 to one job. So those jobs will never have to worry about being filled because people are not leaving them, because the labor force for labor-based work is very big. But the labor force for technological work is very, very small, and people are not getting those skills and they're not going to get that education to adequately work the technology of our time. The iPhone 8 is not the technology I'm talking about. We're talking about the advancement in technology. We're talking about the Raspberry Pi. We're talking about coding. We're talking about being able to put in information into a computer to make that computer do what you want it to do. Those are the things that we're talking about, and we're going to have to get that. But we have an issue with unemployment. Drug addiction continues to rear its ugly head. Even the Trump administration has to put money into heroin epidemic because it has exacerbated funding for most organizations, for most treatment programs, and they have to keep putting money in it because more and more of the citizenry is becoming addicted to heroin and heroin-like drugs, whether it's oxycodone, whether it's Percocet, whether it's drinking codeine-based syrups, those kind of things. It's not dissipating at all. It is increasing rapidly. The smoking of marijuana, the high potency of the drug that people are smoking, it is causing major problems. As we could say, it could be at an epidemic proportion right now. Listen, you're talking to Minister Johnny Banks Sr. I'm the Executive Director at Knock at Midnight. Knock at Midnight is located at 400 West 76th Street and Suite 206. We're talking about what happens when the prison industrial complex is spinning properly. We're talking about it's 5 things that you could see readily when mass numbers of people are incarcerated, whether that's home confinement, because generally if a person is on home confinement, he or she may or may not work or may not even desire to work. So you got home confinement, you have the city or the county confinement, you have the state confinement, you have the federal confinement, and all of these institutions are bursting at the seam with people who are in them. There's no shortage of prisoners. There's no shortage of the complex and the mass amounts of money and the vast amount of money that these places are making. Many of the penal institutions in Illinois, you can't even go in it and touch anybody anymore. There's virtual visitation where you can actually do visits and never see the person you're talking to except on the screen. And so you can't really look into their eyes to see if they're healthy, to really see how their mental health is, to see if they're being treated right, to see if there's any harm being caused by their incarceration, because we're talking just like I'm talking to you across this monitor right now. This is what happens in virtual visitation. It is one of the most painful things in the reality is to go to visit a loved one or visit someone who's incarcerated, knowing that when you leave, you have to leave them there in those conditions which are subhuman, in terms of people being locked in a cage, in terms of having a small area to live and cohabitate with someone else, when many times the crimes that people have committed are unjust. I recently knew a young man who had his 3rd strike. They gave him 30 years. He had not committed any murders. He had not sold any mass quantities of drugs. He had not sexually assaulted anybody. He had 3 felonies that were based on none of what I've just said. And they gave him 30 years based on the law, even though they didn't want to give him that much time. But based on law, that is an unjust system. We need to work on that and talk about that. The addiction is increasing. Mental illness. Everybody that lives in Chicago knows that since our mental institutions have been closed, that Cook County Jail is the largest mental institution in the country. Many of our people that are struggling, whether they are white, whether they're Hispanic, or whether they're black, Asian, if you have a mental illness, chances are you're going to wind up in the Cook County Jail. And you will spend some time there for basic crimes, non-criminal things, for stuff that is not a felony, misdemeanor, but based on your condition, you may find yourself there in an ordinary amount of time because you can't post bond. And they say they're working on letting people post bonds who don't have a criminal history or their crime they committed does not need them to be incarcerated, but we still see that is not happening as of yet because the complex can't thrive off being empty. It thrives off the commissary. It thrives off the televisions that are sold. It thrives off the things that are the goods that's going back and forth, the phone calls that are being made. One of the billion-dollar businesses is the phone industry inside of the prison industrial complexes. It's unbelievable the exponential amount of money it costs to talk for a few minutes to your family on the phone. Those things are real. And then illiteracy. We know that there's probably about 75%, 80% of the people that's incarcerated are illiterate. They do not have the ability to pass remedial tests. They just don't. And so when you get homelessness, unemployment, mental illness, illiteracy, and drug addiction into the same area, it creates a vacuum. This vacuum then sucks all of the realities, or all of the ability, or all of the resources out of particular communities, so they cannot grow, they cannot thrive, they can't reproduce the things that they need, because what is needed is in the vacuum called the prison industrial complex. Angela Davis was one of the people that spearheaded this whole understanding of, and was able to verbalize it or put it in a language where people could really pick up on what it's really about. And she talked a lot about mass racism and how the lives of black and brown people in this reality is mass, what's called breaking the law, but the laws are unjust. How can you break an unjust law? So that means that people are in jail based on laws that have been imposed on them, and the people that made the laws knew they were unjust when they made them. Listen, we have a call on the line. Caller, could you please be brief with your comment or question? Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am. I've been listening to the program, and I just wanted to get your perspective on whether or not the issues you describe are character issues or policy issues.
Well, if a young man or a young lady is living in a country where if you make 3 bad decisions, you could be given life in jail, that's policy. But character is a part of that as well. And I want to be one of those people that's going to sit up here on this TV and say, well, if you did right, you wouldn't have to worry about that. But what about when the opportunities to excel in a country that's built on excelling, built on being successful, built on this whole dream? What about when certain groups of people, African American, Latino, Hispanic people, when their dream is actually a nightmare because of the laws that are enacted, that are imposed especially for that group of people? You can't develop what you need to develop if the playing field is not level. And then when we look at when you have a immoral people, because immorality is real. And so let me not say that everybody that's incarcerated are moral. There are a lot of immoral people. But what happens when your only choices is either starve or break the law? See, let me give a good example. If two people go to jail for stealing, one goes because he stole because he was hungry. Another one stole because he was trying to make some money. They should be dealt with totally different. If a person is stealing because they're hungry, they need some services. If a person is stealing because they want to make some money, they need some discipline. And so both people can't be judged the same way. Why would you incarcerate a hungry man and give him the same amount of discipline that you would give to an undisciplined man? Something that does not make sense. And so our struggle is, how do we define character in the midst of chaos? How do we define character in the midst of poverty? How do we define character? Because yes, there are a lot of people that get everything they need at home. But we know that many homes today have broken down, and a lot of the people that is incarcerated today, they come from a long line of people that was incarcerated before them. And so it's not an excuse, it's a reality. So we have to go in and not penalize people for being victimized by unjust laws. We simply can't continue to do that and act like it's okay, act like something is wrong. Yes, something is wrong, because when a person has to use drugs, when a person can't work, when a person is struggling with mental illness, they are going to wind up doing some things that are against what we would call, quote unquote, the law. And we have to take a look at that. We have to examine that and do what we can do to right some of the wrongs. Listen, my name is Johnny Banks. I'm the executive director of A Knock at Midnight. I haven't talked to anything about what A Knock at Midnight doing. This time goes so fast. I sit here and I look up and it's time to go. Listen, we can be reached at A Knock at Midnight at 773-488-2960. That's 773-488-2960. Our program offices are located at 400 West 76th Street, and that's Suite 206, 400 West 76th Street and Suite 206. Or you can visit our website at akamworks.org. That's akamworks.org. But whatever you do, reach out to me, watch the show, let's dialogue, discuss, and or debate the issues of our times, anything that we could say to each other or say in defense of each of the injustices that's brought upon each one of us, then we can help each other change our lives and better the conditions by which we live. Just remember that in the darkest hour, truth and knowledge are the way. Good night, and God bless you.